Welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to do the making of global world. This is based on 2023-24 syllabus, so that's why we are only going to do the concise syllabus. The pre-modern world. When we talk of globalization, we often refer to an economic system that has emerged since last 50 years or so. But as you will see in this chapter, the making of global world has a long history of trade, migration of people in search of work, the movement of capital, and much else. As we think about the dramatic and visible signs of global interconnectedness in our lives today, we need to understand the phases through which this world in which we live today has emerged. All through history, human societies have become steadily more interlinked. From the ancient times, travelers, traders, priests, and pilgrims traveled vast distances for knowledge, opportunity, and spiritual fulfillment, or to escape persecution. They carried goods, money, values, skills, and ideas, inventions, and even germs and diseases. हम लोग germs and diseases का भी देखेंगे. As early as 3000 BCE, an active coastal trade linked the Indus Valley civilizations with the present-day West Asia. For more than a million cowries, cowries means the Hindi cowdy or seashell. So cowdy is basically, cowdy means a seashell. I hope you have seen a seashell. Seashell is something what like this, right? A seashell, and then it has things like this, right? So a seashell, definitely a seashell is used. So here you can see there is a seashell and all written here. Seashell and all written here. So okay, they are made from China. So basically, for Manila cowries, the Hindi cowdy seashells used as a form of currency. तो पहले से हम currency के तो use करते थे. So that it was used as a form of currency. Now from the Maldives found their way to China and East Africa. तो क्या है, ये जो shells थे जो वहाँ पे currency थी, थोड़े पुअर है, हम जानते हैं Maldives पुअर है तो हल्का सा, तो उसकी वजह से वो लोग अलग अलग रीजन्स है वो shells यूज़ करते थे. तो ये जो shells है ये क्या करते थे, they found their way to China and East Africa. तो क्या है, they found their way to China and East Africa. The long-distance spread of disease carrying germs may be traced far back as 7th century. By the 13th century, it had become an unmistakable link. Images of a ship on a memorial stone. So here we can see an image. So okay, images of a ship on a memorial stone, Goa Museum in the 10th century. So this is a Goa Museum in the 10th century. Images of ship on memorial stone. We know that Goa was basically the hub for the Portuguese and the French. So basically more, if I would say, more for the Portuguese, the influence of Goa, the influence of Portuguese in Goa is actually in a very vast amount, which has actually shaped its culture and traditions. So we can see that the travelers are shown here. We can see that there are various memorial stones found in the western coast indicating the significance of oceanic trade. They all show, we know Vasco da Gama, we know many such explorers, right? We have studied in the previous classes. So oceanic trades, they all talk about the oceanic trades. They all signify the oceanic trades. Silk routes link the worlds. Silk routes link the world. How do they do so? This can be a question, and this has already been asked in the boards examination. So silk routes link the world. The silk routes are a good example of vibrant pre-modern trade and cultural links. Okay, what is silk route? Silk route is a good example. Silk route is a good example of vibrant pre-modern trade and cultural links between distant parts of the world, and cultural links between a distant part of the world. The name Silk Route points out the importance of westbound Chinese silk cargoes along this route. Historians have identified several silk routes. Over Asia and Europe and Northern Africa. They are known to have existed since before the Christian era and thrived almost till the 15th century. But the Chinese pottery also traveled the same route. The Chinese silk, as we saw, the Chinese silk cargoes along this route. So the Chinese silk cargoes along this route. Then the historians have identified several silk routes over land by sea, knitting together vast regions of Asia and linking Asian, Europe and Northern Africa. They are known to have existed before the Christian era and thrived almost till the 15th century. But the Chinese pottery also traveled the same route. And then the textiles and spices and as did the textiles and spices. So textiles and spices from India, as do the textiles and the spices from India and Southeast Asia. In return, precious metals like gold and silver flowed from Europe to Asia. Now, trade and cultural exchange always went hand in hand. Early Christian missionaries almost certainly traveled this route to Asia, as did the Muslim preachers to find a few centuries later. Much before all this, Buddhism emerged from the eastern India and spread in several directions through the intersecting points on the Silk Route. So now let us summarize the Silk Route and linking the word. First, what was Silk Route? Silk Route was a good example of vibrant pre-modern trade. So it was a good example of, first point is vibrant pre-modern trade. So this is the first point. Vibrant pre-modern trade, then, and cultural links between the distant parts of the world, and cultural links between the distant part of the world. So the name Silk Route points to the importance of westbound Chinese cargoes. This, now where has this name come from? This can be the second point. So the second point is the western. The name Silk Route comes to point to the importance of the westbound Chinese silk cargoes along this route. Historians have identified several silk routes. They have overland by sea knitting together vast regions. So they have the sea knitting. So in sea knitting, yani ki sea exploring, right? They have we know how much Columbus, right? So Columbus was there. Then there was Vasco da Gama. So Columbus went to America instead of India. He went to America, right? And Vasco da Gama finally discovered India, right? We know that it is a route like this. We have studied in our previous classes. In a route. What is a route? A route is something like this. Maybe here, maybe or anything. Here, maybe any country as such. And you're going from the country, you're going from the seaport of India to suppose there here we have here we can say maybe from Maharashtra to here, that is America, right? So you can, this is a Silk Route, right? So the first example of Silk Route, so guys, Silk Route is an example of vibrant pre-modern trade. Silk Route is an example of vibrant pre-modern trade. Silk Route is an example of vibrant pre-modern trade and cultural links between distant parts of the world. The name Silk Routes points to the importance of the westbound Chinese silk cargoes. So it points to the importance of the westbound Chinese silk cargoes. Historians have identified several silk routes overland by sea knitting together vast regions of Asia and linking Asia with Europe and Northern America. They are known to have existed before the Christian era. So, the Silk Route is known to be existed before the Christian era. So, basically, Asia and Europe with Northern America, they are known to have existed since before the Christian era and thrived almost till the 15th century. But Chinese pottery also traveled the same route. So Chinese silk cargoed the same route, and Chinese pottery also traveled the same route, as did the textiles and the spices from India and Southeast Asia. In return, precious metals and gold and silver flowed from Europe to Asia. Trade and cultural exchange always went hand in hand. Early Christian missionaries almost certainly traveled this route to Asia, as did the early Muslim preachers. A few centuries later, much before all this, Buddhism emerged from the eastern India and spread in several directions through intersecting points on the Silk routes. Now, Silk Route is basically as trade depicted in a Chinese cave painting, 8th century cave. This is a Mogao Grottois, Gansu, China. So this is a Mogao Grottos. This is a Mogao Grottos, Gansu, China. Now food travels. Now how did this spaghetti and we know that the food has definitely traveled. It has not come to us automatically. So now food travels, spaghetti and potato. Food offers many examples of long distance cultural exchange. Traders and travelers introduced new crops to the lands they traveled. Even ready for foodstuff in distant parts of the world might share common origins. Take spaghetti and noodles. It is believed that noodles traveled west from China to become spaghetti. So how did noodles become now? How did we evolve a thing called as spaghetti? We all did spaghetti with noodles, don't we? Right? So they're quite similar, but they are actually different. But they're quite similar, right? So take spaghetti and noodles. It is believed that the noodles traveled from west from the China. Okay, they traveled from the west from the China. They traveled west from China. So okay, they traveled from China to the west. Okay, they traveled the west from China. They traveled west from China. They traveled west from China to become spaghetti. Or perhaps Arab traders took pasta to the 5th century Sicily and Iceland, now in Italy. So क्या Sicily is in Iceland, now in Italy. So can the Arab traders took the pasta to 5th century Sicily and Iceland, now in Italy. Similar foods were also known in India and Japan. So the truth about their origins may never be known. Yet such guesswork, suggestions, and the possibilities of long distance cultural contact even in the pre-modern world. Many of our common food such as potatoes, soya, groundnuts, then we have the maize, then we have things called as tomatoes, then we have chilies, sweet potatoes, and so on, were not known to our ancestors until about 5 centuries ago. These foods were not only introduced in Europe and Asia after Christopher Columbus accidentally discovered the vast continent that would later be known as Americas. Now there's again a picture here. Merchants from Venice and the Orient exchanging goods from Marco Polo. Book of Marvels, 15th century. Now, who is Marco Polo? You know in the latest chapter that Marco Polo was the person who introduced printing in Italy. So, again, merchants from Venice and Orient. So, again, Venice and Orient exchanging goods from Marco Polo. Book of Marvels, 15th century. Now, here we will use America to describe North America and South America and the Caribbean. So North America, we will not use Americas, we will use America to describe North America, South America and the Caribbean. In fact, many of our common foods came from America's original inhabitants. So, okay, many of our common food came from America's original inhabitants, the American Indians. So, okay, the American Indians, America's original inhabitants, the American Indians. So sometimes the new crops could make the difference between life and death. Europe's poor began to eat better and live longer. So now Europe's poor began to eat better and live longer with the introduction of the humble potato. So because of the potato, the European potato has been a very great significance since Europe's poor began to eat better and live longer with the introduction of humble potato. Ireland's poorest peasants became so dependent on the potatoes that when disease destroyed the potato crop in the mid-1840s, hundreds and thousands of died through starvation. Now, here you can see the picture also, the Irish potato famine, illustrated in figure 1849. Hungry children digging for potatoes in a field that has already been harvested, hoping to discover some leftovers. During the Great Irish Potato Famine from 1845 to 1849, around 10 lakh people died of starvation in Ireland, and double the number emigrated in search of work. Now we have conquest, disease, and trade. The pre-modern world shrank greatly in the 16th century. In the 16th century, the pre-modern world shrank greatly after European sailors found a sea route to Asia. After the European sailors found a sea route to Asia and also successfully crossed the Western Ocean to America. For centuries before, the Indian Ocean had known a bustling trade with goods, people, knowledge, customs, etc., crisscrossing its waters. The Indian subcontinent was central to these flows and a crucial point in the networks. The entry of the European helped expand or redirect some of these flows towards Europe. Before its discovery, America had been cut off from the regular contact with the rest of the world for millions of years. But from the 16th century, it had vast lands and abundant crops and minerals began to transform trade and lives everywhere. Precious metals, particularly silver from the mines located in Peru. So, particularly silver from the mines located in present-day Peru and Mexico, also enhanced Europe's wealth and financed its trade with Asia. Legends spread in 17th century Europe about South America's fabled wealth. Many expeditions set off in search of El Dorado, the fabled city of gold. So El Dorado was a fabled city of gold. The Portuguese and the Spanish colonization of America was decisively underway by the mid-16th century. European conquest was not just a result of superior firepower. In fact, the most powerful weapon of the Spanish conquerors was not a conventional military weapon at all. It was the germs. So, of the Spanish conquerors, the most powerful weapon of the Spanish conquerors were germs. such as those of smallpox, and they carried on their person. Because of the long isolation, America's original inhabitants had no immunity against these diseases. They did not have any. They did not have any immunity against. They did not have any immunity against these diseases that came from the Europe. Smallpox in particular proved a deadly killer. Once introduced, it spread deep into the continent, ahead even of any European reaching there. It killed and decimated whole communities, paving the way for conquest. Now, biological warfare. What is biological warfare? John Winthrop, the first governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in New England, wrote in May 1634 that smallpox signaling God's blessing for the colonists. The natives were near all dead of smallpox. So, as the Lord had cleared our titles, so to what we possess. Now, guns could be bought Guns could be bought and captured and turned against the invaders. So guns could be bought, captured, and turned against the invaders, but not diseases such as smallpox, to which the conquerors were mostly immune. So basically, what was their fear? That the guns bought or captured, and so guns bought can be captured and turned against the invaders and turned against them, that they